Chapter 343. Tai Yen Academy. Chu Luiwei raised her head slightly and looked at the 5-story library in front of her. The golden words on the signboard shone brightly under the sunlight. This is the library. Elder Emotsong was standing beside Chu Luiwei. Although he did not like Chu Luiwei, Ching Han did not want to see her, so he sent him. 2 young men in academy uniforms standing at the entrance bowed respectfully when they saw the 2 of them. Greetings, Elder Emotsong. Elder Emotsong nodded and looked at Chu Luiwei coldly. For a period of time from now on, you can borrow any of the books here. Come in with me. Chu Luiwei did not mind his attitude and followed him in. As soon as they entered, Chu Luiwei saw that the walls were filled with all kinds of books. There were rows of shelves in the middle, and they were also filled with books. She quickly scanned the place. Elder Emotsong stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Chu Luiwei. However, he did not see the shock on her face. He coughed and emphasized, "This is the first floor. There are tens of thousands of books related to cultivation on the first floor." Chu Luiwei nodded calmly. Elder Emotsong was even more displeased. The collection in Tai Yen Academy's library was as vast as the sea. It was rare for an ordinary family to have a few books on martial techniques. Even the aristocratic families would only have a few hundred books at most. However, they had tens of thousands of books here. Chu Luiwei did not react at all after hearing his words. This made Elder Emotsong very aggrieved. He could not help but sneer secretly. She was just pretending. I heard that Tianlu Academy has a lot of books too. Although it's not as good as ours, there should be at least a few thousand books, right? He asked casually. Chu Luiwei nodded again. Many of the books here are not available in our academy. Elder Emotsong laughed proudly. Just as he was about to say something, Chu Luiwei continued. Master said that although the academy is big, he would rather leave it empty than leave it for trash. Elder Emotsong almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Trash? Did Chu Luiwei know what he was saying? You're saying these are trash? Chu Luiwei smiled. Please don't misunderstand. That's not what I meant. I'm just saying that a part of this place is. You. Elder Emotsong suppressed the anger in his heart and shouted in a deep voice. Chu Luiwei, you'd better be polite. If you continue to speak rudely, we'll chase you out even if you get first place in the Qingjiao competition. Chu Luiwei looked at him sincerely. Elder Emotsong, you're overthinking things. I'm not being disrespectful to your academy, but many of the books here are indeed not worth collecting. As she spoke, she walked to the side and casually picked up a book. Tiger Wolf Fist, Intermediate Yellow Grade. The martial techniques that warriors cultivate are divided into 4 levels: Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. Each level is further divided into upper, intermediate, and lower levels. Yellow is the lowest level. Moreover, it's only an intermediate level, so it's not worth mentioning. Normally, martial techniques of this level are meant for Stage 2 warriors, right? Chu Luiwei's lips curled up. But our academy only accepts warriors who are Stage 3 and above. Thus, our academy doesn't have any books like this. Elder Emotsong was speechless. Their academy recruited more students than Tianlu Academy, so their standards were naturally not as high as Tianlu Academies. There were still many Stage 2 warriors in Tai Yen Academy. Apart from that, they were passionate about collecting all kinds of books. They had the most books among the 3 academies, and they were proud of it. Why did it sound so cheap when it came from Chu Luiwei's mouth? What do you know? It's not only high-grade martial techniques that are worth collecting. Tai Yen Academy's book collection is all-encompassing. It can be described as complete. Chu Luiwei smiled but did not say anything. If this little library could be considered as complete, then she really didn't know how to describe her private study room in her previous life. Seeing Chu Luiwei's smile, Elder Emotsong somehow felt even more uncomfortable. Chu Luiwei did not say anything, but he felt inexplicably embarrassed. This is only the first floor. You won't say that when you see the books upstairs. With a flick of his sleeve, he began to walk up the stairs. Chu Luiwei raised his brows slightly. I hope so. Elder Emotsong stopped in his tracks. I shouldn't have come if I knew this would happen. Chu Luiwei can anger someone to death with just one mouth. She better not be too presumptuous during this period. Otherwise, I'll definitely teach her a lesson. The two of them went up to the second floor. The space here was as big as the first floor, but there were fewer books here. Instead, there were some glowing balls of light. These balls of light contain martial arts techniques as well. However, their levels are much higher than the ones below. Elder Emotsong's confidence was boosted a little. I don't mind telling you that there are many lost copies here. However, it's up to you whether you can open them or not. The balls of light were corresponding barriers. The higher the level of the item, the stronger the barrier's defensive power. Based on Chu Luiwei's strength, he might not even be able to open a profound-level martial arts technique, let alone others. Chu Luiwei asked in return, "Do you mean that I can see all of these?" Elder Emotsong sneered. "As long as you can do it, it's up to you." Chu Luiwei did not seem to notice the mockery in Elder Emotsong's voice. A sincere smile appeared on his face. "Your academy is really generous." Elder Emotsong's heart skipped a beat. He felt that something was amiss. After thinking for a while, he could not figure it out, so he gave up. He raised his hand and pointed upstairs. The third floor is filled with Xian formations. The fourth floor is filled with prescriptions. I still have things to do, so I won't be showing you. You can do whatever you want. He felt that if he continued to stay with Chu Luiwei, he would be so angry that he would fall sick. Chu Luiwei didn't mind. She just looked up and asked curiously, "Why are you here?" "Then, what about the fifth floor?" Elder Emotsong's expression turned serious. "Only the academy head is allowed to enter the fifth floor. Although you can read here for free for a month, that doesn't include the fifth floor." Chu Luiwei nodded. "The books on the fourth floor should be enough for you to read. As long as you follow the rules, we won't make things difficult for you. However, if we find out what you're doing here, don't blame us for being rude." Chu Luiwei agreed with a smile. "Don't worry. I won't be here for long, so I won't waste my time on other things." Elder Emotsong was relieved. He gave a few more words of advice and left. Soon, Chu Luiwei was the only one left in the library. She looked at the balls of light in front of her. She crossed her arms and tapped her chin with the other. "Where should I start? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet." Chapter 344. Elder Emotsong walked out of the library and looked at the two guards. Be careful during this period of time. Apart from the first floor, all books borrowed from the other floors must be recorded in the book. If there are any abnormalities, inform me as soon as possible. The two guards replied respectfully. "Yes." Elder Emotsong was slightly relieved and couldn't help but turn around to take a look. The door was closed, and everything was peaceful. Although Chu Luiwei's words were harsh, this was Tai Yin Academy after all. She was a smart person and wouldn't cause any trouble for him. But for some reason, he felt uneasy. He didn't know where this uneasiness came from, but he felt as if his heart was suspended in midair, as if an accident would happen at any time. He frowned and felt that he might be overthinking. He erased the worry in his heart and turned to leave. However, as soon as he left, the two guards standing at the door suddenly sensed something and looked at the gray-white stone tablet placed on the right side of the door of the library. At this moment, a line of words suddenly appeared on the stone tablet. Snow Walk, Middle Stage Mystic Stage. After a while, the words on the stone tablet gradually converged and formed a star that shone brightly on the stone tablet. "This has already started?" One of them asked in bewilderment. "How is this possible?" She opened a middle stage mystic stage martial arts technique. Didn't they say that Chu Luiwei is only a stage 2 warrior now? How can she open a book of this level? The other person immediately denied. But her strength is comparable to a stage 4 warrior. Logically speaking, she should be able to do it, right? But even a stage 4 warrior needs some time to open a middle stage mystic stage martial arts technique. Elder Emotsong just left, and Chu Luiwei opened it less than 15 minutes ago. How could she do it? Could it be someone else in the library who took it? According to the rules, the students of our academy are not allowed to enter the library unless there are special circumstances. She is the only one in the library now. The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. If their guess was correct, it meant that Chu Luiwei was stronger than they thought. Don't worry. Even if she opened the book quickly, it would still take a lot of time to study. It wasn't like this had never happened before, but usually, those people would only be able to read 100 books at most in a month. Among them, there are only a few who are truly proficient. That's true. Let's record down the first book she borrowed. One of them took out a booklet from his bosom and recorded the words that appeared on the stone tablet. However, before he could finish writing, another person suddenly exclaimed. He looked up in confusion. What's wrong? The man was dumbfounded. His hand, which was pointing at the stone tablet, trembled slightly. She has already opened the second book. What? The man in charge of recording hurriedly looked over and saw another line of words appear on the stone tablet. Scarlet Flame Chop, Mystic Middle Stage. Another Mystic Middle Stage martial skill. The two of them were stunned. The impact of this matter on them was so great that they didn't dare to confirm that it was true for a moment. I'm not seeing things, right? It's Mystic Middle Stage? The man in charge of recording rubbed his eyes. The words had turned into a second star, right next to the first. In other words, these two books were of the same level. Chu Luiwei had indeed opened the second Mystic Middle Stage martial skill. How did she do it? She should have only read the beginning of the first book, right? How did she open the second one? Maybe she's just picking a martial skill that she likes. That's why she read it so quickly? That's possible. A cultivator's time and energy are limited. Choosing a suitable book to study carefully might be better than reading 10 books. But even so, the speed at which she opens the books is too fast. If she keeps doing this, impossible. There are barriers on the books. Every time she opens one, she has to use up a portion of her energy. How can she keep doing this? Forget it, let's not worry about this for now. Record down the second book as well. If Elder Emo-tsang finds out that we missed something, he won't let it go so easily. At this point, he suddenly stopped. The two of them exchanged glances again. Given the current situation, if this continued, Elder Emo-tsang would most likely break down. In the library, Chu Luiwei quickly read through the book in her hands. Then she put it back and shrugged her shoulders in disappointment. Another Mystic Middle Stage. Ever since Elder Emo-tsang left, she had been staying on the second floor. She randomly picked a bookshelf in the middle and started reading. To her disappointment, she had already browsed through the entire bookshelf, but the best one was only at the middle stage of the profound stage. Most of them were lower stage mystic. Chu Luiwei helplessly walked to another bookshelf. Suddenly, she saw a book from the corner of her eye. She focused her eyes on it. Upper yellow stage. Chu Luiwei was shocked. She had thought that the books here were at least mystic stage. She did not expect there to be books of this level. She rubbed her forehead and started to feel that she had been too polite to Elder Emo-tsang. She continued reading helplessly. This time, she really wanted to find a few good books to read and learn some new martial arts techniques. This was because, unlike Xian formations and prescriptions, high-level martial arts techniques were passed down by sections. Under normal circumstances, the martial skills displayed by martial artists could reveal their origins and so on. It was the same for her. There were many high-level martial arts techniques stored in her mind, but they belonged to her in her previous life. Once they were displayed, people would definitely notice that something was wrong. Therefore, although she planned to continue learning these martial arts techniques in secret, she had to choose some new ones at the same time. Although she was a little disappointed, she still read through all the books to avoid wasting them. She had an eidetic memory. Even if she only skimmed through them quickly, she could still remember them clearly. Moreover, because she had once learned high-level martial arts techniques, she could always understand these high-level martial arts techniques very quickly. Chu Luiwei walked along the bookshelf and read one book after another, as if she was constantly throwing books into her mind. One book, another book. Why is she still continuing? The two guards outside the library saw a large patch of starlight gradually lighting up on the grayish-white stone tablet and finally collapsed. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 345. Chu Luiwei had only been in the library for a little over 2 hours and she had already read over 100 books. And they were all mystic class martial arts techniques. You stay here and keep watch. I'll go ask Elder Emote Song for instructions. One of them said with a panicked look on his face. Then he quickly left. The remaining person could not help but shout. Then, should I continue recording? He had written more records in the past 2 hours than he had in the past few days. More importantly, if Elder Emote Song saw this booklet, he would be even angrier. The person who was about to leave rubbed his face in frustration. Of course. According to Chu Luiwei's trend, she's going to look through half of the library. Not only did he have to inform Elder Emote Song, but he also had to inform the dean and the other elders as soon as possible. The only thing they could do was to remember how much Chu Luiwei had read. As long as they did their jobs well, the dean and the other elders would not be able to vent their anger on them. However, he was afraid that he would not have an easy time during this period of time. Seeing that the person had left, the remaining person wanted to say something, but he saw another line of words on the stone tablet from the corner of his eye. He could only resign himself to his fate and continue writing in the booklet, groaning inwardly. Was Chu Luiwei even human? Elder Motsong had just finished his work and was about to lie down to rest when he heard hurried footsteps outside. Elder Emote Song. Elder Emote Song. When he heard the voice, he immediately frowned and walked outside. What's wrong? The man panted as he said, That's right. Elder Emote Song Chu. Chu Luiwei He took a deep breath and did not know what to say. Elder Emote Song sneered. She's really restless. Did she cause a ruckus in the library? The man shook his head. No. What's wrong? Elder Emote Song was getting impatient when he saw that the man could not finish his sentence after a long time. You should go and see for yourself. The man said awkwardly. Seeing him like this, Elder Emote Song felt an uneasy feeling in his heart again. There was only Chu Luiwei in the library. If something happened, it must be her doing. Speaking of which, she was only there to read. What else could she do? In the end, he still decided to take a look. He lifted his foot and headed towards the library. The two of them quickly returned to the library. Elder Emote Song raised his head to take a look at the library. After making sure that everything was fine, he felt slightly relieved. What's going on? Wasn't there no problem? The man standing behind him couldn't help but remind him. Elder Emote Song, look over there. Elder Emote Song turned his head to look, and his expression froze. On the stone tablet that had always been quiet and plain, countless starlight actually lit up at this moment. The stone tablet was connected to the library. Every book in the library corresponded to the corresponding position on the stone tablet. Every time a book was opened, a notification would appear on the stone tablet. In the end, it would turn into a star. In this way, everything that happened in the library would be clear at a glance. However, Elder Emote Song had never seen so many stars on the stone tablet at the same time. In fact, they had even joined together into a single piece. Is there something wrong with the stone tablet? He subconsciously suppressed that absurd conjecture and asked anxiously. However, the answer given by the two of them made his heart sink to the bottom of the valley. Elder Emote Song, this is the record of the books that Chu Luiwei opened after she entered. The man who had been taking notes said bitterly and handed over the booklet. Elder Emote Song glanced at it and saw that the brand new booklet was already half filled. His eyelids twitched violently. Almost uncontrollably, he stiffly took the booklet and flipped through it a few times. Page by page, line by line, everything was clear and clear. The ink on the latest page was not even dry yet. His lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. His hand that was holding the booklet trembled slightly. Elder Emote Song, ever since you left, Chu Luiwei has been reading rapidly. I don't know how she did it, but the words on the stone tablet kept appearing one after another. This is the result of more than 2 hours of wait. Elder Emotsang, she opened another book. The man was explaining carefully when he suddenly saw another line of words appear on the stone tablet. He immediately opened his mouth nervously. Elder Emotsang gritted his teeth and turned to look. The light on the stone tablet was especially dazzling. Crush! He suddenly threw the booklet back into the man's arms and shouted angrily, "You're a traitor! Keep writing! I'd like to see how much Chu Luiwei can read." The man hurriedly opened the booklet again and wrote another line with trembling hands. Elder Emotsang stared at the library as if his gaze could pierce through it and cut Chu Luiwei like a knife. Something was wrong. Something was definitely wrong. Apart from the first floor, most of the books on the other floors had a barrier. Chu Luiwei might be able to open a few books, but how could she keep reading like this? Could it be that her force wouldn't run out? Moreover, even if she could open them easily, how could she read so many books in such a short time? Elder Emotsang, don't worry. Chu Luiwei is reading so quickly. She must be picking the books she likes. She must have thrown the books away after a glance. It's just a bluff. She might not have learned anything at all. Elder Emotsang's mood improved a little when he heard this. In fact, he was thinking the same thing. This was the only reasonable explanation. Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, he said hatefully. Elder Emotsang, you're right. Chu Luiwei is only in her teens. She just won the Jianghu competition, so it's natural for her to be arrogant. She won't benefit from doing this. She might not be able to pick anything until the end of the competition. As soon as he finished speaking, the stone tablet suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Elder Emotsang and the other elders looked over in shock and exclaimed, "She found an Earth-grade martial arts technique." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 346. Jingshan Finger, Lower Earth Rank. A line of words appeared clearly on the stone tablet. It was indeed an Earth rank martial arts technique. This, the man in charge of recording looked at Elder Emotsang with his mouth agape. According to the rules, the activation of an Earth rank martial arts technique had to be recorded separately. Furthermore, the dean and all the elders had to be informed. Elder Emotsang's heart was boiling like lava. He didn't know how to vent his anger. All he could do was bellow, "Hurry up and record it." The man hurriedly took out another book and recorded it down with trembling fingers. The person standing behind Elder Emotsang was even more flustered. He tried his best to minimize his presence, not daring to utter another word. He even held his breath. Everyone could see that Elder Emotsang was on the verge of exploding. Anyone who dared to approach him would be in trouble. Elder Emotsang raised his head abruptly and looked at the second floor of the library. Although there were many books in the library, there were only a few books on Earth-rank martial arts techniques. Moreover, they were all hidden very well. How did Chu Luiwei find it? He wanted to rush in and chase Chu Luiwei out, but he could not. In the end, Chu Luiwei was only reading in there. She did nothing else. Even if she was reading at a breakneck speed, it was not her fault. Therefore, they could only continue to wait. If Chu Luiwei continued to behave like this, they would have to wait until the time was up for her to come out. Elder Emotsang, Chu Luiwei may have unlocked an Earth-rank martial arts technique, but it's not all for nothing. Look, it's been a while, but she hasn't continued to read other books. She must be studying that one. According to the agreement, she can only enter the library to borrow books, but she can't take them out. Therefore, she must be spending all her time on that one book. What do you think? The man in charge of recording said cautiously. Elder Emotsang's face darkened. Of course, he had thought of that, but it was an Earth-rank martial arts technique after all. Now that Chu Luiwei had found him, he felt that he had suffered a great loss. Last year, the student who obtained first place in the Jianghu competition didn't manage to obtain an Earth-rank martial technique from the other academies. You guys stay here and watch. I'll report this matter to the president. Yes. When Elder Emotsang arrived at Chenghan's residence, it was already night time. Light seeped through the window of Chenghan's room. Standing outside the door, Elder Emozong could vaguely hear the voices of several people talking. He knocked on the door, and the voices inside stopped. The door was opened. It was Ching Han. Under the illumination of the lantern light, his complexion did not look very good. Emozong? Why are you here? What is it? Elder Emozong looked over his shoulder. There were 2 other people in the room. They were the people sent by the other 2 academies to investigate Jingchua and Yang Jianqing. It seemed like the 3 of them didn't have a good conversation. Elder Emozong hurriedly replied, "Dean, there is an urgent matter that I need to inform you immediately." Cheng Han was troubled by these 2 people and didn't know how to get rid of them. Elder Emozong's arrival came at the right time. He glanced at Elder Emozong and asked, "Elder Emozong? Is it urgent?" Elder Emozong understood and nodded without hesitation. Cheng Han turned to look at the 2 people. "I'm sorry, but it seems like we have to stop here today." The 2 people knew that Cheng Han was trying to escape, but they didn't want to expose him, so they got up and left. After they left, Cheng Han let Elder Emozong into the room and heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Emozong asked tentatively, "Dean, it seems like things aren't going well?" Cheng Han was frustrated. Yang Jianqing and Jingchua are both dead, and there isn't even a corpse left behind. Where am I supposed to find any clues? They've already followed them to the academy, but they still haven't found anything. If they can't find anything, they'll just say that I'm covering for them. Cheng Han felt that he was being wronged. However, the matter had blown up, and everyone knew that they were investigating, so he couldn't just chase them out. He rubbed his temples. "Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Why are you here?" Elder Emozong's anger had mostly subsided, but it was mostly replaced by uneasiness and anxiety. Before he came, he had been thinking about how to tell the dean about this. Be it the dean or Taiyan Academy, they had all suffered too much at the hands of Chu Luiwe. This matter would only make things worse. After deliberating for a long time, he finally decided to tell the truth. Chu Luiwe found an Earth-grade martial arts technique in the library. Cheng Han's expression froze. Elder Emozong had already expected this reaction, so he tried to persuade him. "Dean, don't worry. Which one did she find?" Cheng Han asked in an urgent tone. Elder Emozong thought for a moment and said, "I think it's Jingshan Finger? This martial arts technique is Earth-grade. Crash. Bang." Cheng Han stood up abruptly, and the chair under him toppled over. He grabbed Elder Emozong's collar. "What did you say?" Elder Emozong recounted the matter with difficulty. "Earthgrade? Fortunately, she has stopped studying this book." Bam! Cheng Han pushed him out of the library. Elder Emozong staggered a few steps and crashed into the wall. Cheng Han's strength was extremely great. This collision almost cracked his shoulder blade, but he didn't dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. He rubbed his shoulders, only to see that Cheng Han had already left with large strides. "Dean!" He was shocked and quickly chased after him. As he chased after Cheng Han, he recalled Cheng Han's reaction. The dean seemed to be particularly concerned about this matter. Even if Chu Luiwe had obtained an Earth-grade martial arts technique, the dean's reaction should not have been so intense. He frowned and quickly caught up with Cheng Han. Inside the library, Chu Luiwe sat cross-legged. In front of her, a book floated quietly, flipping page by page. She stared at the words and pictures on the book, imprinting them in her mind. Jingshan Finger. Although it was only Earth-grade, it was one of the best martial arts techniques in the library. This was a martial arts technique that was related to finger techniques. A martial arts technique of this level was not something that could be mastered in a short period of time, so Chu Luiwe planned to memorize it first and practice it seriously when she had the time. Earth-grade martial arts techniques were something that ordinary cultivators would need to read hundreds of times before they could begin to understand and thousands of times before they could master it. However, Chu Luiwe was different. She had read many martial arts techniques that were more advanced than this one, so it did not take her much effort to read this one. However, when she had read 1/3 of the book, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why was this Jingshan Finger more complicated and obscure than the ones she had read before? Mobile users, Please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 347. She started reading from the beginning with uncertainty and realized that her intuition was right. This Jingshan finger was indeed more exquisite than the finger techniques she had practiced before. It was not obvious at the start, but the feeling became stronger as she read on. Looking at the middle, Chu Luiwei could already imagine what kind of shocking power Jingshan finger would have after successfully cultivating it. Her heart raced uncontrollably, and all the blood in her body seemed to be boiling. If she guessed correctly, this Jingshan finger was definitely at the level of an upper-stage earth-stage martial art. Even in the Tianling dynasty, an upper-stage earth-stage martial art technique was rare. Chu Luiwei really did not expect that such a martial art technique would be hidden in the inconspicuous library of Tai Yen Academy. After a short moment of excitement, another question surfaced in Chu Luiwei's mind. Since this Jingshan finger was comparable to an upper-stage earth-stage martial art technique, why was it judged as a lower-stage earth-stage martial art technique? Moreover, the people of Tai Yen Academy did not seem to know the true level of this Jingshan finger. Otherwise, they would not have casually placed it on the second floor. Chu Luiwei maintained the doubts in her heart and continued to look behind. When she finished 2/3 of the book, she finally realized something. This martial art technique seemed to be incomplete? Of course, this book looked intact from the outside. There were no gaps, and the contents were very coherent. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to tell that there was a problem. However, Chu Luiwei had practiced an earth-stage martial art technique before, so she quickly realized that this Jingshan finger was not the complete version. Chu Luiwei frowned and continued reading. After flipping through this book, she finally confirmed her guess and knew why it was only classified as a lower-stage earth-stage martial art technique. This Jingshan finger was indeed an incomplete martial art technique. If someone practiced according to the instructions in this book, they would still be able to master an earth-stage martial art technique. However, the power that could be used would be greatly reduced compared to its original potential. However, if one could find the missing parts of this Jingshan finger and complete it, it would instantly increase by a few levels. Although a low-level Earth-rank martial skill was precious, it was not worth mentioning when compared to an upper-level Earth-rank martial skill. Now that there was a chance to obtain an Earth-stage upper-level martial skill, Chu Luiwei naturally wouldn't let it go. She looked at the Jingshan finger again, imprinting it deeply into her mind. After that, she stood up and continued searching, hoping to find other things related to the Jingshan finger. Outside the library, night fell, and the sky was completely dark. Cheng Han rushed over from afar and saw that the surroundings were dark. Only the candlelight on the second floor of the Compendium Pavilion was exceptionally clear. His heart felt as if it had been struck by something. Then, he quickened his pace and rushed over. The two guards in charge of guarding the library saw his figure and immediately saluted in fear and trepidation. "Greetings, Principal." Cheng Han ignored them and immediately looked at the stone tablet beside him. The stone tablet, which had always been dull and plain, was now lit up with a large amount of starlight. Above the vast expanse of starlight, there was an abnormally bright star. Even if all the other stars were added together, they wouldn't be as dazzling as this one. His vision turned black and he staggered, almost falling to the ground. "Principal? What's wrong?" The two guards saw that something was wrong with Cheng Han and asked carefully. Cheng Han held his forehead and lowered his head in silence for a while. Only then did he suppress the emotions in his heart and calm himself down. He turned around and hid the trace of panic in his eyes. "How much has Chu Luiwei read now?" "Principal, don't worry. Ever since Chu Luiwei entered, all the books she has read have been recorded. They are all in these two booklets. Please take a look." One of them immediately handed the booklets over. Cheng Han took the two booklets. Obviously, one was a normal record and the other was a special record of Earth-rank martial skills. He quickly skimmed through the two books. In fact, he was no longer interested in the normal record book. Even though it was almost filled with words, it was not as shocking as the lone line of words on the second booklet. His face was like a stiff mask. Although there was no expression on his face, It looked inexplicably unnatural. It was so strange that it sent chills down one's spine. Principal, Chu Luiwei read very quickly in the beginning, but ever since she found the Earth rank martial skill, she hasn't done anything. The other person quickly glanced at Cheng Han, trying to ease the atmosphere. However, he soon realized that Cheng Han's face had turned even uglier. Shut up. Cheng Han couldn't take it anymore and threw the booklet at the person who spoke. That person was terrified and immediately knelt down to apologize. Principal, please calm down. Please calm down. Seeing this, the other person felt a chill in his heart and quickly knelt down as well. They had never seen the principal so angry in public. The principal seemed to be angrier than expected about this matter. At this moment, Elder Mo Tsang finally caught up with them. He saw the two people kneeling on the ground begging for mercy and stopped in his tracks. Even though Cheng Han's back was facing him, it wasn't hard to imagine what kind of expression he had. Just as he was hesitating about what to say, another line of words appeared on the stone tablet. Phaseless Manual, Middle Stage, Dark Rank. Chu Luiwei started again. He immediately said, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and continue writing." The two people who were kneeling on the ground were shocked. They quickly looked up and saw the words on the stone tablet. Their faces all paled in unison. Didn't Chu Luiwei already open an Earth rank martial skill? Why did she start reading other books? Cheng Han also noticed this and immediately looked over. When he saw that it was only a dark rank martial skill, his tense heart relaxed a little. Elder Mo Tsang walked up to him. Seeing that his expression was less tense, he advised him in a low voice. Earth rank martial skills are difficult to understand. With Chu Luiwei's current level and strength, it would be difficult for her to read through it. It seems that she has given up. Cheng Han rubbed his eyebrows. I hope so. However, in the next moment he suddenly thought of something. His eyes widened and he looked at the second floor. What if Chu Luiwei didn't give up? As if to confirm his guess, another line of words appeared on the stone tablet. It was still a dark rank martial skill. The stars on it were still increasing. In other words, Chu Luiwei was still looking for something. Cheng Han's heart was filled with fear. Could it be that Chu Luiwei had discovered the secret in the library? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 348. Chu Luiwei seems to be on the second floor. She seems to be more talented as a mystic cultivator and celestial physician. Why isn't she on the third or fourth floor? Elder Mo Tsang did not notice Cheng Han's expression and muttered to himself. This made Cheng Han even more worried. That's right. If she doesn't know something, why is Chu Luiwei only on the second floor and not on the other floors? She started reading other books after finding the Earth rank martial skill. She's obviously looking for something. Cheng Han could not help but feel anxious. However, he could not rush in and ask Chu Luiwei to stop. The words on the stone tablet continued to appear. Chu Luiwei was still flipping through the books on the second floor at an extraordinary speed. One book, another book. Cheng Han stood there motionless. The others did not dare to move and could only wait with him. After a long time, Elder Mo Tsang finally asked, Dean, Chu Luiwei is going to be in there for a while. You're not going to wait here forever, are you? Cheng Han was even more frustrated. Of course he knew. This was what he was most worried about. Previously, he did not expect Chu Luiwei to find the Jingshan finger and even open it to take a look. However, it would be strange if she continued to stay here and would attract more attention. Be careful. Record down all the books that Chu Luiwei borrows. With that, he waved his sleeves and left. Elder Mo Tsang felt that Cheng Han's reaction was strange and could not help but look at the library again. What's the dean worried about? After Cheng Han and Elder Mo Tsang left, only the other two were left to guard the library. Since things had developed to this point, they did not dare to be careless and continued to guard the library. Time ticked by and soon, the moon was high in the sky. However, the lights on the second floor were still on. One of them yawned and could not help but grumble. How long is Chu Luiwei going to read? What time is it? Why isn't she asleep yet? The other person was also affected and became tired. Who wouldn't want to be able to enter the book collection pavilion and read as they wish? If it were you, would you be willing to sleep in there? Besides, she had found an Earth-rank martial skill. Who knew how excited she was? In any case, if I were to obtain an Earth-grade martial skill, I would read it even if I didn't sleep or rest. That may be the case, but everyone needs to rest, right? She's not tired, but I've written so many words today. I'm tired. The two of them waited for a while longer. Seeing that Chu Luiwei had no intention of stopping, they had no choice but to take turns recording. This isn't. Chu Luiwei quickly browsed through another bookshelf, but she still did not find anything. Ever since she discovered Jingshan Finger, she increased her reading speed. Until now, she had already read 1/5 of all the books on the second floor. However, she didn't find anything related to Jingshan Finger. That martial technique scroll was like a lost pearl in the vast sea. Chu Luiwei sighed softly. Perhaps there was only one scroll of Jingshan Finger here. After all, if Tai Yen Academy really had the complete version, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Chu Luiwei was about to continue moving forward when Dumpling suddenly appeared in front of her. Its round eyes were filled with obvious disapproval. She was stunned for a moment. Dumpling, what's the matter? Dumpling crossed its paws and placed them under its head. Chu Luiwei couldn't help but burst out laughing. You want me to sleep? Dumpling nodded vigorously. Chu Luiwei shook her head. Don't worry, I'm not sleepy now. She had been thinking about Jingshan Finger and didn't want to rest. Just as she was about to move forward again, Dumpling stopped her again and shook its head frantically. Chu Luiwei smiled helplessly and tapped its head. Alright, stop shaking me. I'll go to sleep. Only then was Dumpling satisfied. It pounced on her and rubbed its head against her face. Perhaps because it was too tired, it fell asleep very quickly. The next morning, Chu Luiwei woke up very early and continued following the path that she saw the day before. The two people in charge of recording outside the library had stayed up all night and had obvious dark circles under their eyes. They couldn't even remember when Chu Luiwei ended yesterday. They only realized that Chu Luiwei had started again. The two of them were angry but didn't dare to say anything. They could only accept their fate and continue recording. Cheng Han didn't sleep well the entire night. Even when he woke up in the morning, the frightening images in his mind hadn't dissipated. They were all related to Chu Luiwei. Jingshan Finger. He felt uneasy and planned to take another look at the library. However, he was stopped not long after he walked out. It was still about the people investigating Yang Jianqing and Hing Jingshua. The families of these two people had been brought over and needed to be interrogated by the people from the three academies. Cheng Han had no choice but to leave with them. The matter at the library was temporarily put aside. Country Yaochen, the palace. The Empress looked at the two people standing in front of her and couldn't help but ask. Is there really no news? The two of them nodded. Her Majesty, we've secretly searched the entire imperial city, but we still haven't found any traces of the fourth princess. The Empress seemed to have lost all her energy as she leaned against the chair dejectedly. It had been a few days, but there was no news of Rong Zhen. These two were from the Xi family. Since they said so, it meant that they really couldn't find her. The Empress closed her eyes weakly. She wanted to ask Si Ting to find out more information from Chu Luiwei, but Si Ting refused. Before she could find a suitable person, Chu Luiwei went to Tai Yen Academy. She really had no other choice now. I understand. You can go back first. She waved her hand and asked the two of them to leave. Everyone in the palace knew that they were from the Xi family, and they claimed that they were here to deliver things on behalf of the Xi family. Hence, they naturally couldn't stay for long. After the two of them left, the Empress sat in her seat and didn't speak for a long time. What's bothering you, Empress? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from the door. The Empress was shocked as she looked up and saw Emperor Zhaowen standing there. She was shocked and hurriedly stood up to bow. Greetings, Your Majesty. Emperor Zhaowen walked over and helped her up. You don't have to be so polite, Empress. The Empress smiled and looked at the few palace servants at the door as she reprimanded them. His Majesty is here, but none of you reported his arrival. You, Empress, you don't have to be angry at them. I didn't want them to be like this on purpose." Emperor Joan shook his head and didn't care. The Empress hurriedly adjusted her expression and smiled. "Since your Majesty has said so, I naturally have no reason to pursue the matter. You haven't been here for a long time, and I'm really flattered." Emperor Joan said, "I've been a little cold to you and your son recently. I heard that you weren't in a good mood recently, so I came to take a look. All right, I haven't seen Jinzhen in a long time. Why don't you come with me?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 349. Upon hearing the first half of the sentence, the Empress was still elated, but the second half made her feel worse. She looked up in shock. "What? Your Majesty, you want to visit Shenzhen?" Emperor Jiawen stroked his beard and sighed. "That's right. Previously she was arrogant and willful, so I purposely ignored her so that she could change. Now that some time has passed, I think she knows her mistake. Besides, I really miss her, so I'm here to visit her with you." Emperor Jiawen had his own considerations. Rong Jin did make a huge mistake, but he received the corresponding punishment. Besides, he was the one who didn't live up to expectations, and the Empress and the rest were implicated. He just wanted them to be more wary of Rong Jin, but he didn't plan on making Rong Jin unable to recover. As for Rong Zhen, she was his favorite daughter in the past, so he couldn't bear to let her go. Hence, after these few days, he took the initiative to ask the Empress to visit Rong Zhen. The Empress hesitated. "Your Majesty, Rong Zhen hasn't been in a good mood recently, and she's been locking herself in her room. I'm worried that she might do something to offend you if you go. Why don't you wait for her to calm down before visiting her?" Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. Locking herself up and refusing to see anyone? What's wrong with her again? Who provoked her again? The Empress smiled apologetically. "You actually know that it's because of Vice Admiral Mu. Previously, she had been hoping to get Vice Admiral Mu to help heal her broken pearl of essence, but you know what happened after that. She's very upset because of this." Emperor Jiawen's expression softened. No wonder. He originally wanted to speak up for Rong Zhen, but Mu Qinghe wasn't someone who was easy to talk to. Besides, Rong Zhen had offended him and made him impatient. Hence, it was even more impossible for him to help. Given the current situation, Rong Zhen could only blame herself for being unlucky. "I heard that Chu Luiyue pleaded for Princess Yongping and got Vice Admiral Mu to invite a celestial physician from the Tianling dynasty to treat Princess Consort Pingjiang." The Empress lowered her eyes, looking sad. This concubine is truly envious. It's a pity that Jinzhen and Chu Luiyue had some conflicts back then. Otherwise, I really want to ask her for help. Perhaps Jinzhen. As she spoke, she wiped her tears with a handkerchief, as if she was very sad and regretful. However, she kept glancing at Emperor Jiawen from the corner of her eye. What disappointed her was that Emperor Jiawen didn't look angry at all. She felt a little depressed. As a princess, Rong Zhen was treated worse than Chu Luiyue and Mu Hongyu. Why was His Majesty not angry at all? However, she didn't know that Emperor Jiawen had been to the Tianling dynasty before and knew how powerful it was. He clearly knew that he and the entire country Yaochen were nothing but ants in Mu Qinghe's eyes. What Mu Qinghe wanted to do and who he wanted to help was his own business. Who was he to say anything? Emperor Jiawen pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. You can't be blamed for this. In the unseen world, everything had its own destiny. However, she can't go on like this. Forget it. I'll go and take a look myself." The Empress was shocked, and she couldn't be bothered to wipe her tears. "Your Majesty, I think it's better to let Jinzhen calm down for a while, right? You know her personality. The more you force her, the more disobedient she becomes." Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows and stared at the Empress. "Empress, you seem to not want me to see Jinzhen. This is weird." In the past, the Empress would always think of ways to invite him over. Of course, he knew that the Empress wanted to show his love for Rong Zhen, so he would turn a blind eye most of the time. However, today was really weird. "No, I'm just The Empress retorted without thinking, but she didn't know how to continue. Emperor Zhou was even more confused. His expression became stern. "Since you're not willing to go, I'll go myself." After saying that, he lifted his foot and walked outside. The Empress was completely flustered. "If I don't stop His Majesty, the consequences will be unimaginable." She followed him without thinking. At the same time, she kept thinking of reasons in her mind. However, Emperor Zhou seemed determined to go. Just as she was in a terrible fix, a person rushed over from the opposite direction. "Your Majesty!" "Urgent report." Emperor Zhou finally stopped and asked with knitted brows, "What urgent report? Why is it so urgent?" The person presented a wooden box with both hands. "Your Majesty, you'll know when you read it yourself." Emperor Zhou glanced at the wooden box, and his expression turned serious. "This is the box that country Xing Luo's emperor used to communicate with him secretly, so it must contain the other party's secret letter. Why is there news at this time?" The Empress took a look and recognized what it was. She was elated. "This is indeed an urgent report, and His Majesty will definitely deal with this first. No matter how urgent Rongzhen's matter is, it can't be more important than the country's matters." As expected, Emperor Zhou held the wooden box in his hands and glanced at the Empress. "We'll end it here today. I'll go and see Rongzhen after I settle this." The Empress couldn't ask for more. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I'll personally visit Shenzhen later and patiently counsel her." Emperor Zhou felt that something was amiss, but he couldn't care less now. Return to the imperial study. Eunuch Min flicked his horsetail whisk. "Set up the imperial study." The group of people left in a grandiose manner. The Empress only heaved a sigh of relief when their figures disappeared in front of her. However, she knew that she had to find Rongzhen as soon as possible. His Majesty already has suspicions, and he will definitely continue. If he finds out that Rongzhen is missing, the Empress didn't dare to imagine it. She stood rooted to the ground for a while before deciding to act until the end. "Let's go to the fourth princess." On the other end, Emperor Zhou returned to the imperial study. After confirming that the surroundings were heavily guarded, he finally opened the wooden box. There was a snow-white letter inside, and there weren't any words on it. However, he didn't look shocked. Instead, he habitually opened it and picked up the brush at the side. He dipped the brush into the ink slab and drew a line on the paper. Then, he drew a second line, a third line. Until the end, he used ink to cover the entire paper. At first glance, there was only a black blob of ink on the paper. But very quickly, white words started to appear under the blob of ink. After about a quarter of an hour, the contents of the scroll were finally revealed. Emperor Zhou read it, and shock flashed across his eyes. Then, as if he wasn't sure, he moved closer and seriously checked every word again. He stared at the paper and kept quiet for a long time until the words on it completely disappeared. "Summon the Crown Prince." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 350. In the blink of an eye, Chu Luiwei had already stayed in Tai Yan Academy for 5 days. Apart from her normal work and rest, she spent most of her energy in the library. When the morning of the 6th day arrived, Chu Luiwei put down the book in her hand and let out a long sigh. There's still nothing. In the past few days, she had read all the books on the 2nd floor, but she still didn't find anything related to Jingshan Finger. This was within her expectations, but she was still a little disappointed. She looked up. The 3rd floor was about Shen formations, and the 4th floor was about medicine. Although she didn't really need these books, she could go up and take a look. Thinking of this, she finally went up. When Cheng Han came to the library again, he saw 2 stacks of books beside each of the 2 guards. Without asking, he knew that those were the records of the books Chu Luiwei had read. Cheng Han's eyelids twitched. On the first day, he knew that Chu Luiwei was a ruthless person, but he still underestimated how perverted she was. "You're here?" The 2 of them had been working hard for a few days and had become much more haggard, but when they saw Cheng Han, they forced themselves to be alert. How many books did she read? Cheng Han controlled his expression and asked. He had been busy dealing with Yang Jianqing and Heng Jingchua these few days, so he didn't have time to come here. He didn't want to open those books at all. The two of them looked at each other and felt a little guilty. Just say it. Dean, she has finished reading all the books on the second floor these few days, one of them braced himself and said. Cheng Han's vision turned black, and his heart seemed to be numb. Then, what about the Earth-grade martial skills? She didn't open any new Earth-grade martial skills. She only read the first one. The darkness in front of Cheng Han's eyes gradually faded. He swallowed hard. That's good, that's good. That's the most important thing. As long as she didn't continue, everything could still be salvaged. She's on the third floor now? Yes. Master. Cheng Han was about to say something when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. He turned around in surprise. Xingchen, why are you here? Situ Xingchen smiled. Your disciple has come today to ask for a temporary leave of absence and return to the palace. Cheng Han asked curiously, why do you want to go back all of a sudden? Situ Xingchen usually spent most of her time in the academy and would only return to the palace when she had something to do. Situ Xingchen lightly nodded. Elder Zhongyi is here today. Elder Zhongyi? So fast? Cheng Han was somewhat surprised. Tonight, Imperial Father plans to hold a welcoming banquet for Elder Zhongyi, so this disciple also has to make a trip back. Cheng Han knew about this matter. Elder Zhongyi was actually country Xing Luo's empress, Zhong Yuxi's brother. He was also Situ Xingchen's uncle. He was an elder of Mingyue Tianshan and had a high status. This was also the reason why Situ Xingchen was sent there when she was young. Mingyue Tianshan was very far from here, and the people there rarely went down the mountain. Hence, it was rare for Elder Zhongyi to come out this time. The reason why he did this was because of Situ Ziyue. Previously, during the Qin Jiao competition, he lost terribly to Chu Luiyue and suffered a huge setback, both physically and mentally. He could not recover from the setback, and his body did not seem to be getting better. Zhong Yuxi's heart ached for him, so she invited Elder Zhongyi over. On the one hand, she wanted to see if there were any problems with his body. On the other hand, she wanted to see if she could counsel him. Of course, she also missed her brother, whom she had not seen for many years. Now that Elder Zhongyi was here, they naturally had to treat him with respect. It's my duty. When you see Elder Zhongyi, send my regards to him, said Cheng Han. Situ Xingchen smiled and agreed. Then, her gaze silently swept past the booklets beside the two of them, and a hint of obscurity flashed across her eyes. Are the books recorded in these booklets, the ones Chu Luiyue read? Digression, there's not enough time. Let's update first. I'll continue to add a part later. Chapter 351. That wave was very small and disappeared very quickly. However, Chu Luiyue was sure that it really existed. She stood in place and waited for a while. Sure enough, that wave came again. But this time, the movement caused by the fluctuations was even smaller. If Chu Luiyue had not observed it carefully, she would not have noticed it. She took a few steps forward and stood in the center of the fourth floor. Then she looked up. The entire fifth floor had a mysterious aura, as if it was isolated from the rest of the world. After a while, Chu Luiyue sensed the third wave. However, this time, it was weaker than the previous one. It was as if the wave was gradually decreasing. Chu Luiyue waited for a while more, but she did not sense any more movements. She looked around. The commotion from the fifth floor did not seem to affect the fourth floor. Everything that happened just now seemed to be her imagination. However, she knew that was not the case. Chu Luiyue recalled Elder Mo Tsong's words. Only the president of Tai Yen Academy could enter the fifth floor? Her rationality told her that she should ignore the commotion on the fifth floor and not provoke unknown trouble. However, deep in her heart, there was a faint impulse that made her unable to leave. Chu Luiyue held her breath and finally walked up the stairs. Just as she was about to step on the stairs, a silver light flashed in front of her eyes. She immediately stopped and looked up. She saw a huge silver Xian formation floating above her head. Countless rays of light intertwined with each other. The Xian formation was like a magnificent matrix that sealed the entire 5th floor. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel a powerful deterrent aura coming from it. She stared at the Xian formation and frowned. It was not impossible for her to break the Xian formation, but it was impossible with her current strength. Moreover, she was more worried that she would attract the attention of others once she started to break the Xian formation. The library was very important to Taiyan Academy, and the 5th floor was obviously the most important one. Cheng Han hated her to the core, so he would definitely watch over her strictly and wait for her weakness. Chu Luiyue took a step back, and the Xian formation dimmed significantly. She gritted her teeth, unwilling to give up. "Do you want to go up?" A hoarse voice suddenly came from his dantian. Chu Luiyue was stunned. "Legendary three-eyed eagle? Do you have a way to help me get in? It seems like you don't know much about my race's abilities." The tone of the legendary three-eyed eagle was as arrogant as ever. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. She had actually forgotten that as divine beasts, the three-eyed eagle clan did indeed have a special ability, space freezing. The so-called space freeze referred to the ability to completely control the space within a certain range. Within that space, the legendary three-eyed eagle possessed absolute authority and supreme power. "You mean, to freeze the 5th floor?" Chu Luiyue's eyes widened as she asked. "Not bad. Since I am in your body and under your control, as long as you enter my divine domain, you will be able to control everything that I can control." So it was called the divine domain. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. She had to admit that the suggestion of the legendary three-eyed eagle was very tempting. On one hand, the legendary three-eyed eagle could use the divine domain to avoid attracting the attention of outsiders. On the other hand, she would have an additional layer of assurance to enter the 5th floor. Now, no one knew what would happen after going up. With the help of the legendary three-eyed eagle, it would definitely be much better. After all, it was a divine beast. Naturally, it was extraordinary. "What are your conditions?" Chu Luiyue asked straightforwardly. The legendary three-eyed eagle took the initiative to help. Of course, it was not out of kindness. "I will help you this time and you will let me go." "Impossible." Chu Luiyue rejected directly. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice contained a trace of anger. "The heavenly square cauldron is already yours. Continuing to trap me inside will not benefit you at all. I will help you this time and you will let me go. Isn't this just right?" "Who said it won't benefit me?" Chu Luiyue interrupted the legendary three-eyed eagle with a smile. "Look, now that you can help me go in, isn't that a benefit? You cunning!" The legendary three-eyed eagle shouted angrily. Chu Luiyue shrugged and did not care at all. "It's not the first day you know me. It's impossible to let you go, but we can discuss other things. Other than that, there's nothing else to discuss. Don't be anxious. I haven't said it yet. If I say it, you might be interested." Chu Luiyue crossed his arms and touched his chin. "How about, I think of a way to help you recover your physical body?" The legendary three-eyed eagle seemed to be shocked. After a while, it sneered. "Just me." Chu Luiyue did not care about the contempt and sarcasm in its words. For an ordinary magical beast, the shattering of the core of essence means that it is completely dead. But as long as the soul of a divine beast is not destroyed, it is not really dead. Although your physical body has been destroyed, your soul is perfectly preserved in the heavenly square cauldron. The reason why you are so eager to leave is actually because of this, right? The legendary three-eyed eagle did not answer. "Of course, I can't do it now, but it doesn't mean that I can't do it in the future. You are a divine beast, so you naturally know how to rebuild your physical body and let yourself be truly resurrected. As long as you tell me, I can naturally help you." After a while, the legendary three-eyed eagle said, "How do I know if you are telling the truth? Other than that, you have no other choice." Chu Luiyue's attitude was very strong. She had the heavenly square cauldron in her hands, which was what the legendary three-eyed eagle was most afraid of. It could not escape. If it was not willing to compromise, it could only continue to suffer the burning pain in the heavenly square cauldron. Therefore, she was determined to win this negotiation. After a short stalemate, Chu Liwei suddenly felt a wave of pressure spreading from the heavenly square cauldron. In the next moment, a black phantom appeared above her head. She looked up. The phantom suddenly spread its wings. A vast power exploded from it. A black feather suddenly drifted from it and flew up to the 5th floor. Chu Liu's gaze was fixed on it. She saw that the black feather suddenly stopped in midair. Divine realm descend. The legendary three-eyed eagle roared. The next moment, with the black feather as the center, the surrounding space began to solidify. Chu Liwei could clearly see that the entire space seemed to have solidified. Soon, the huge Xian formation on the 5th floor was also enveloped. One of the stars stopped flickering. A ray of light stopped flowing. Soon, the entire Xian formation was completely solidified. It was like a magnificent and dazzling picture scroll that had been compressed. Chu Liwei widened her eyes. Blood constantly pounded against her eardrums, and her mind was in a state of roaring. Her heart was almost about to jump out. This was the first time she had seen a divine beast use the divine realm. Although the legendary three-eyed eagle was only a soul now, the divine pressure it displayed still made Chu Liu's blood boil. This was the strength of a divine beast. Go! Digression: yesterday, I fell asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning and was about to go crazy. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 352. Chu Liwei took a step forward almost uncontrollably. When her body entered the frozen space, a cold feeling suddenly swept over her. The entire space was like a flowing liquid. Chu Liwei could clearly feel that when she moved in this space, the resistance she felt was as if she was walking in a quietly flowing stream. She held her breath and couldn't help but look up curiously. That black feather floated quietly in the center, as if it couldn't be moved no matter how hard she tried. Chu Liwei knew that that was the key to the legendary three-eyed eagle's divine realm. Everything in this space was controlled by that black feather. Chu Liwei was secretly amazed by the magic of the divine realm. It was rumored that when a cultivator broke through to the 9th rank, they could step into a higher level and also have the power to use the divine realm. Unfortunately, this was just a rumor to her. The ancestor of the Tianling dynasty had once reached the 9th rank, but he left not long after breaking through the shackles and never returned. In the history books of the royal family, there was no content after that. Everything only left the world with countless questions. Chu Liwei was the second person to have the Tianjing Yuan meridian after that ancestor in the entire Tianling dynasty. Everyone secretly hoped that she could reach the same realm as that ancestor, and even she herself was constantly working hard to cultivate. Unfortunately, she was betrayed and forced to die in the royal family's ancestral hall. She never had the chance again. She sighed softly in her heart, put away her memories, and walked up. After walking through the 9 steps, she arrived in front of the Xian formation. She stretched out her hand and touched the starlight on the Xian formation. However, at this time, in the legendary three-eyed eagle's divine realm, everything was under its control. Even the power of the Xian formation was almost completely frozen and couldn't be used. She continued to walk up, and her entire body silently passed through the Xian formation. When she turned around, she saw that the Xian formation had returned to its previous state, without any trace of being touched. It had to be said that the legendary three-eyed eagle was really something, Chu Liwei thought, and finally stepped onto the 5th floor. A somewhat familiar fluctuation came from the front. She looked up. Country of Xing Luo Imperial Palace. Situ Ziyue's sleeping quarters. Elder Zhongyi was taking his pulse while Situ Xingchen stood by the side and waited quietly. After a long while, Elder Zhongyi finally loosened his grip and smiled. "All right, your internal injuries are basically healed. They won't affect your cultivation in the future." Only then did Situ Ziyu's tense expression relax a little. "It's all thanks to you. If it wasn't for your help these past few days, I'm afraid that my body would have." "Hey, you can't say that. I remember that Xing Chen's master, Cheng Han, is also a 5th-grade celestial physician. Even if I don't come, he will definitely be able to treat you. Elder Zhongyi smiled and waved his hand. Sidu Ziyue sighed and said, to be honest, Elder Zhongyi, it's not that I don't trust Dean Qinghan, but I trust you more. Sure enough, this flattery made Elder Zhongyi's expression become slightly better. At the side, Sidu Xingchen had a faint smile on her lips as if she didn't care about Sidu Ziyue's belittling of her mentor. She had been at Mingyue Tianshan for many years, so she naturally understood Elder Zhongyi's character. He had entered Mingyue Tianshan to cultivate a few years ago and rose to become an elder. He had a respectable status and didn't think highly of people like Qinghan. Ziyue, I know your intentions, but Xingchen is still here. Qinghan is her mentor after all. Aren't you afraid of hurting her by saying this? Said Elder Zhongyi with a chuckle. Actually, brother is right. In Xingchen's eyes, mentor Qinghan can't be compared to you. Sidu Xingchen smiled gently, and her beautiful face was filled with sincerity. Elder Zhongyi took out a folding fan and lightly knocked on Sidu Xingchen's forehead. I haven't seen you in a few years, but you're even better at sweet-talking people. Sidu Xingchen smiled. You're joking again. She glanced outside and said, it's already late. Elder Zhongyi, why don't you let brother have a good rest first? I'll accompany you back. Elder Zhongyi looked at her thoughtfully, then laughed out loud, that's right. But then, let's leave first and let Ziyue recover. Situ Ziyue originally wanted to send them off personally, but the duo rejected him. Hence, he could only lie back down on the bed. On the other end, Situ Xingchen accompanied Elder Zhongyi and left. After walking for a distance, Elder Zhongyi then asked, Xingchen, why are you here? Xingchen, do you have something on your mind? A helpless and bitter smile surfaced on Situ Xingchen's face. It's been so many years. Indeed, I can't hide my thoughts from you. Elder Zhongyi placed his hands behind his back, and his voice was much lower and gentler. You grew up by my side, and I've always treated you as my biological daughter. These few days, you've been busy helping Ziyue. I can tell that you have something on your mind and that you're not very happy. If you don't mind, you can tell me. Situ Xingchen kept quiet for a while before softly asking, Elder Zhongyi, do you know that? Elder Zhongyi, do you know that? Brother Rongxiu is engaged to someone? What? Elder Zhongyi suddenly stood still and looked at Situ Xingchen in shock. When did this happen? To who? Just 10 days ago. The girl he's engaged to is Chu Luiyue. Elder Zhongyi was confused. Who is that? He stayed in Mingyue Tianshan all year round, so he didn't know much about the outside world. This time, he came all the way here after leaving the mountain. He had been busy taking care of Sidu Ziyue's health for the past few days, so he didn't know about the Qingjiao competition and the rest. Situ Xingchen briefly introduced Chu Luiyue and roughly explained what had happened recently. Elder Zhongyi didn't recover his senses for a long time. You're saying that he took the initiative to propose to that girl? How can that be? He's cold by nature, and he hasn't interacted much with other girls for so many years in Mingyue Tianshan. Why did he? Elder Zhongyi looked at Situ Xingchen with heartache. No wonder these past few days you. He had long sensed that Situ Xingchen liked Rongxiu. Now that he saw her sad expression, he thought that it was indeed so. Situ Xingchen forced a smile and said, You don't have to worry about me, I'm fine. I thought that I could wait for him all these years, but I didn't expect. I can only say that we're not fated. Seeing her like this, Elder Zhongyi thought for a while and said, Why don't you ask me to teach him? Why don't I ask his master and see if I can cancel this engagement? Situ Xingchen's heart skipped a beat, but she shook her head. You can't force anything to be sweet. Why should I be the bad guy? Besides, Country Yao Chen's crown prince, Rong Jin, is coming tomorrow. Elder Zhongyi was confused. Why is he here all of a sudden? Situ Xingchen looked down. Marriage alliance. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 353. Marriage alliance? With whom? Elder Zhongyi was dazed, but he suddenly understood when he saw Situ Xingchen's expression. With you. Situ Xingqian nodded lightly. Father has the same intention. Elder Zhong Yi was shocked. Country Yao Chen and Country Xing Luo didn't have much interaction before, so why are they suddenly marrying each other? They even have designs on Situ Xingqian. What exactly is your father thinking? Rong Jin isn't outstanding in any way, and from what you said just now, he's narrow-minded and won't amount to anything. He's not worthy of you at all. Even if it's not Rong Xiu, it should be another young talent. How can it be Rong Jin? Situ Xingqian didn't seem to care as she smiled. He's Country Yao Chen's crown prince after all, and he's not completely useless to be able to come this far. You might have underestimated him. Besides, even though this matter hasn't happened yet, Father is very insistent, so he must have his reasons. What do you think? Anyway, I don't think this marriage alliance will work. Elder Zhong Yi sneered. If it really happens, won't you have to stay in Country Yao Chen in the future? Since Rong Jin has done so many ridiculous things, it means that he can't take on big responsibilities. Even though he's still the crown prince, he can't stay in this position for long. Xingqian, don't worry. When that kid comes tomorrow, I'll definitely stop this marriage. With me around, your father won't dare to force you. Situ Xingqian's eyes sparkled. Elder Zhong Yi, I know that you're doing this for my own good. But I've said so much to you today because I hope that you'll agree to this marriage tomorrow. What? You really want to marry Rong Jin? Elder Zhong Yi looked at Situ Xingqian in disbelief. Why you can't purposely marry Rong Xiu because he wants to marry someone else, right? Situ Xingqian chuckled. You're thinking too much. Why would I do such a thing? I really agree to this marriage. You also know that not many people know about this before. If I suddenly say it out loud, many people will definitely object to it. But if you can express your agreement tomorrow, then the others won't say anything. Elder Zhong Yi had an extremely high status in Country Xing Luo. As long as he spoke, this matter would definitely go smoothly. Xingqian, have you really thought this through? Elder Zhong Yi looked at Situ Xingqian's determined expression and couldn't help but sigh. Alright, since that's the case, I'll agree to it. Situ Xingqian's smile deepened. Many thanks, Elder Zhong Yi. Country Yao Chen, Imperial Palace. It was already late at night, but the Empress and Rong Jin were still discussing something in the room. You're going to Xing Luo tomorrow. This marriage must succeed. The Empress looked very serious. This is your best chance. If you miss it, who knows how long you'll have to wait. Rong Jin nodded. I know. Don't worry, I've already contacted Situ Xingqian. There won't be any problems with this. The Empress relaxed a little and leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile on her face. That's good. I asked you to think of a way to improve your relationship with her. I didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Rong Jin also laughed and looked rather smug. Everyone says that Situ Xingqian is the brightest pearl in Xing Luo. Ever since she became of marriageable age, countless people have proposed to her, but she didn't agree. I originally thought that she would be hard to get close to, but I didn't expect her to. Perhaps she was interested in you before. The Empress sized Rong Jin up and smiled. To a woman, love is the most unpredictable thing. Everyone said that Situ Xingqian had high standards, but when she met someone like Rong Jin, it was easy for her to fall in love with him. Rong Jin originally didn't have any special feelings for Situ Xingqian, but when such an outstanding beauty liked him in all aspects, his ego was greatly satisfied. It was precisely because of this that his attitude toward this marriage changed drastically. Previously, he was a little unwilling, but now that he thought about how he could see Situ Xingqian tomorrow and settle the marriage, he had an inexplicable sense of anticipation. Anyway, you did a good job in this matter. When you arrive, try to settle this matter as soon as possible. As long as you settle the marriage, your position as the crown prince will be stable. The Empress sighed. This way, even if your father finds out about Zhenzhen, we'll have a trump card. Rong Zhen asked worriedly, Haven't you found her? Haven't you found her? There's no news at all. It's as if she completely disappeared from the face of the earth. If it weren't for the lack of movement in the palace, she would have thought that Rong Zhen was dead. However, she clearly wasn't. Someone secretly hid Rong Zhen somewhere, and they couldn't find her after searching for so long. The Empress didn't know how she spent the past few days in fear. The last time, Emperor Zhouwen mentioned that he wanted to visit Rongzhen, but he suddenly received a letter from Xing Luo, so he was delayed. Later on, she guessed that the contents of the letter were related to the marriage alliance. This was because Emperor Zhouwen removed Rongjin's house arrest not long after, and his attitude toward Rongjin improved significantly. "You're leaving tomorrow. Because of this, your father even specially asked Jinjin to send you off, but I stopped him. Your father is busy with you and Situ Xingqian, so he can't care about Jinjin for now. However, he already has suspicions, and this matter can't be hidden for long. As long as you can settle the marriage alliance as soon as possible, your father will weigh the pros and cons and definitely won't do anything to us." Rongjin nodded. "I understand." Princely Mansion. Rong Xiu sat in the study room and was writing something. Yan Qing and Umo waited at the side. The octagonal glazed lamp's light shone on Rong Xiu's jade-like face. He looked down, and his long eyelashes cast a faint shadow under his eyes. It was like a wisp of smoke floating across the bright moonlight, cold and noble. After some time, he finally stopped writing. Yan Qing and Umo were both energized as they looked up. Rong Xiu picked up the thing he wrote and read it again before placing it on a clear, square jade stone in front of him. The moment the two came into contact, the square jade stone suddenly emitted a faint phosphorescent light. It turned out that the square jade stone was sunken in, and there was an extremely shallow pool of water inside. That thing melted when it touched the water, and it turned into rays of light on the water surface. After a while, the light disappeared, and the water surface returned to normal. It also gradually seeped into the jade stone and disappeared. At first glance, it seemed to be an extremely normal jade stone, and there was nothing special about it. Rong Xiu pushed that thing forward and lightly said, "Send it back." "Send this back." Yan Qing stepped forward and carefully picked that thing up. But at this point, he saw a golden light suddenly appear on Rong Xiu's long and white fingertips. He said in shock, "Master, you're in charge." Master, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 354. Rong Xiu glanced at his fingertips, his gaze cold. In the next moment, that cluster of golden light instantly dissipated. The entire process was extremely fast. If not for Yan Qing and Umo standing nearby, they would have thought that what they saw just now was just an illusion. Rong Xiu leaned back in his chair, one hand supporting his forehead. There was a faint trace of fatigue between his eyebrows. "You may leave." After the initial shock, Yan Qing's expression became very serious. "Master, in your current state, I'm afraid that you have to make a trip back as soon as possible." He had only left for a few days to retrieve this item, but his master had already developed to this point. Thinking about it carefully, ever since he started interacting with Chu Luiyue, his master had never returned. Rong Xiu closed his eyes and didn't say anything, but his meaning was very clear. "Master," Yan Qing wanted to persuade him again, but Umo couldn't help but cough, desperately signaling to Yan Qing with his eyes. Yan Qing looked back. Seeing him like this, he hesitated for a moment before respectfully retreating. "Master, don't worry. I'll do it right away." With that, he left with the strange jade. Umo hurriedly said, "It's already very late. Master, you should rest. I'll also take my leave first." Rong Xiu waved his hand. Umo hurriedly followed Yan Qing out. As soon as Umo walked out, he saw Yan Qing waiting for him outside. The two of them exchanged glances and didn't say anything. They just left together. The two of them walked side by side for quite a distance. When they were far away from Rong Xiu's study, Yan Qing finally spoke with a cold face. "Today's situation is definitely not the first time. Did you know about it before?" Umo could only nod with a bitter face. "A similar situation happened a few days ago." "Then why didn't you persuade him? Don't you know how serious this matter is? If I didn't see it today, when would you have told me?" Yan Qing was usually very calm and indifferent. She rarely had any mood swings, let alone get angry. His reaction at this moment showed how big of an impact this matter had on him. Umo shivered unconsciously, feeling inexplicably guilty. I did try to persuade him. But look at Master, do you think I can persuade him? Yanqing's face was still cold. Then you should have told me earlier. What's the use of telling you? Umo fiercely rubbed his face. Do you think that Master will listen to what you say? Yanqing fell silent. They had followed Master for many years and understood Master's character the best. Since he refused to go back now, it was useless for anyone to say anything. It seems that the forceful summoning by Master had a huge impact. Yanqing murmured. If it wasn't for that incident, Master would have been able to hold on for a long time. But now, didn't Master ask you to retrieve this item because he's determined not to go back for a while? Umo patted his shoulder. Don't worry too much. Master knows what he's doing. Yanqing kept quiet for a while before asking, did Master say when he's planning to go back? Umo looked troubled. It seems like he's planning to wait until Mu Qinghe leaves. I don't know what's wrong with this Mu Qinghe recently. He's been staying in the Imperial City, doing nothing and refusing to leave. No one knew what else he wanted to do, but no one dared to ask. Even Emperor Jianghu didn't dare to disturb him for no reason, let alone others. I think you should send this item back first. Don't delay the important matters. If anything happens to Master, I'm here. Don't worry. I'll inform you immediately if anything happens. Yanqing finally gave up after Umo repeatedly assured him and left with the jade. Umo looked at his departing back view, and a tinge of guilt appeared in his eyes. If Yanqing knew that Master's situation was worse than what he saw today, how would he feel? Now, I can only hope that Mu Qinghe leaves as soon as possible. And that person? Hurry back. In the library, Chu Luiyue looked at the empty fifth floor in front of her and knitted her brows. There's actually nothing here. Not to mention books, there's not even a bookshelf here. At a glance, the 4 white walls were empty. Chu Luiyue found it increasingly strange. That's not right. In any academy, there was no way that a place like the library pavilion would leave an entire floor devoid of content. She didn't give up as she walked forward and started to carefully check everything here. But no matter how hard she searched, she didn't find anything. She even knocked on the 4 walls, but it was still the same. After searching one round, she finally stopped. She held her chin with one hand and fell into deep thought. Previously, when she was preparing to leave on the 4th floor, she did feel 3 waves. Although each of the 3 waves was smaller than the previous one, there was no doubt that they were there. Then where did they come from? Chu Luiyue originally thought that even if there weren't as many books here as there were on the other floors, there should be something special. But she didn't expect that there was nothing here. Or perhaps she just hadn't found it yet. Chu Luiyue thought for a long time, but still couldn't find an answer. She simply sat on the ground and crossed her legs. Anyway, there was still 1 day left. She could wait here and see if the waves would appear again. Time slowly passed. But Chu Luiyue didn't see any signs of movement. Bored to death, she decided to silently recite the Jingshan finger again. Because when she came in, both parties had already agreed that she could borrow any book in the library, but every book had to be returned to its original position after reading it. Moreover, the books on each floor were not allowed to be taken to other floors. Therefore, Chu Luiyue could only rely on her own memory to recite the Jingshan finger. She held her breath and focused. In her mind, the Jingshan finger appeared clearly. Chu Luiyue started to recall the first move and tried to cultivate it. The force in her body surged towards her dantian. When it condensed into a ball, she controlled a strand of force and poured it into her right index finger. But before that strand of force reached her right index finger, it had already dissipated into the Yuan meridian. Chu Luiyue readjusted, mobilized an even smaller amount of force, and tried again. It was still a failure. But Chu Luiyue wasn't discouraged. She continued to try again and again. The first step now was to control the force so that it could flow along the Yuan meridian from her dantian all the way to her right index finger. Just this point alone was very difficult. Because this required the cultivator to have a sufficiently strong Yuan meridian, It also required the cultivator to have exquisite control over the force. Chu Luiyue only wanted to try it first, but the more she tried, the more she realized that it was more difficult than she had imagined. Her competitive spirit was aroused. She actually tried it over 1,000 times. When the sun shone on the next morning, Chu Luiyue's right index finger was finally covered in a layer of faint silver. Before she could exclaim in surprise, she suddenly felt that her surroundings were bright. She subconsciously squinted her eyes and looked around. Then her eyes suddenly widened. Countless silver characters appeared on the walls around her. They were shining brightly. Digression, I'm sorry, I can't stand it anymore. Tomorrow, I'll land at 6. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 355. Chu Luiyue looked at the scene in front of her in shock. The 5th floor was indeed not empty. To think that such a shocking secret was hidden in all directions. Chu Luiyue subconsciously wanted to walk forward. Suddenly, countless rays of light flew from all directions and gradually condensed in front of her. In a moment, 3 large silver words appeared in the air in front of her. Awakening God Technique. The 3 words were like flowing water, swaying gently and shining brilliantly, but with an unparalleled pressure. Chu Luiyue was shocked. This aura was very similar to Awakening God Finger, but it was several times stronger than Awakening God Finger. And this pressure was even more vast and boundless. Chu Luiyue's heart was beating wildly, as if it was being pulled by some mysterious force. She slowly stretched out her finger and gently tapped on the 3 large words. It was like a stone being thrown into a calm lake. The void in front of her suddenly rippled, with the 3 words as the center, spreading out in all directions. The ripples spread to the surrounding walls. Buzz. The subtle ripples came again. Chu Luiyue looked over. The words that appeared on the surrounding walls seemed to be affected as well. Like the stars in the dark night, they flickered and disappeared. Her heart suddenly trembled. This ripple was exactly the same as the one she felt on the 4th floor. In the next moment, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt an inexplicable feeling coming from her fingertips, all the way to the bottom of her heart. In an instant, she seemed to have an indescribable sense of connection with the entire space. She seemed to have sensed something, looked up to the left and carefully identified the words on the wall. Soon, she realized that the content on the wall was exactly the same as the Awakening God Finger she saw earlier. She immediately looked at the 2nd wall beside her. Sure enough, the content on the wall was the same as the Awakening God Finger. But as she looked at it, Chu Luiyue realized that something was not right. The thing on the 2nd wall had actually transformed the Awakening God Finger into a palm technique. And its power had also become stronger. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes and looked at it seriously again. He could basically confirm that the level of this palm technique was at the middle stage of the Earth stage. An absurd and bold idea suddenly appeared in Chu Luiyue's mind. She couldn't wait to look at the 3rd wall. At this point, he changed from a palm technique to a fist technique. More importantly, once this fist art was mastered, it was very likely that it would reach the upper level of the Earth rank. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress his wildly beating heart as he looked at the last wall. Just like the 3 walls in front of him, there was also some glowing writing on it. However, after staring at it for a while, Chu Luiyue realized that he couldn't understand what it was. None of the words could be read smoothly, and it looked very chaotic. Chu Luiyue looked at it for a long time, but still couldn't figure it out. However, this only made her even more excited. It was rumored that heaven rank martial skills were different from ordinary martial skills that were recorded with pen and ink. The heaven rank martial skills in this world were all obtained by powerful people who comprehended the heavenly Tao. If one wanted to cultivate a heaven rank martial skill, they couldn't use their eyes to see it. Instead, they had to use their force to sense it. If a cultivator's realm wasn't enough, they wouldn't be able to touch it or even understand it. Just like this moment, Chu Luiyue had seen a heaven rank martial skill once in her previous life, and it was on the day of her coming-of-age ceremony. It was left behind by the ancestors of the Tianling dynasty and had always been treasured by the royal family. Originally, after she ascended the throne, she could officially start trying to cultivate the heaven-rank martial skill, but she couldn't wait until that day. However, even though it had been a long time, she still clearly remembered the scene when she saw the heaven-rank martial skill. She remembered everything that had happened back then clearly. She could confirm that the content on the last wall was indeed a heaven-rank martial skill. Chu Liyue's hands clenched into fists. The blood in her body seemed to be boiling, making her entire body seem to be burning. In fact, when she saw the content on the second wall, she guessed that the level of these things might be gradually increasing. The result was indeed so. There was even a heaven-rank martial skill. After the shock, Chu Liyue calmed down and started to think. No wonder Elder Emotsang said that only the dean could enter the 5th level. There was such a shocking secret hidden here. Once people knew about it, it would attract countless powerful cultivators to fight for it. At that time, Taiyan Academy would definitely not be able to hold on. Even the entire country Xingluo would be in trouble. However, Chu Liyue couldn't figure out why such a shocking existence would appear in this small country Xingluo's Taiyan Academy. She even suspected that the dean of Taiyan Academy didn't know what this thing was. If Cheng Han knew, why didn't he choose to cultivate it? Even if he didn't understand the heaven-rank martial skill now, the finger technique, fist technique, and palm technique in front of it were extremely powerful. If he didn't know, "You owe me again." The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment before she reacted. That's right. The heaven-rank martial skills pressure was extremely strong. If it wasn't in the legendary three-eyed eagle's god territory, it would have caused a huge commotion. From this point of view, the legendary three-eyed eagle had indeed helped her a lot. Okay, I'll remember it for now. Chu Liyue didn't mind and admitted it straightforwardly. The legendary three-eyed eagle was silent for a moment before it said coldly, "You're quite lucky." Chu Liyue's lips curled up. Of course, how could it be just not bad? It was simply heaven-defying. This was a heaven-rank martial skill. Some people might not even see it in their entire lives. She had only come to the library to read, and she actually had such a fortuitous opportunity. Even Chu Liyue couldn't help but sigh. This trip was really worth it. However, there was a very troublesome problem now. She didn't seem to have a way to take this God-stunning technique away. She had already memorized the God-stunning finger. The God-stunning palm and God-stunning fist were much more complicated, but she could completely memorize them as long as she read more. The most troublesome thing was the thing on the last wall. She realized that she couldn't remember the contents at all. The heaven-rank martial skill contained an extremely strong pressure. According to her current realm and strength, she couldn't comprehend it at all. Every time she finished reading it, it was as if there was a hand that forcefully erased those things from her mind. Moreover, after Chu Liyue tried a few times, she felt a little tired. She knew that this was the result of her forceful actions, so she didn't continue. She turned her gaze back to the 3 big words in front of her. "God-stunning technique," she muttered softly. She had to leave here today. She had to think of a way as soon as possible. She really couldn't give up on the heaven-rank martial skill in front of her. She looked at her hand and suddenly had a question. How did she summon this God-stunning technique just now? Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in her dantian. Chu Liyue was slightly shocked. A water droplet appeared on her fingertip. That water droplet quickly changed, and then turned into a piece of transparent, incomplete paper. The contents on the last wall were clearly reflected on it. Digression. A wave of action was about to come. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 356. The stars on the transparent remnant page shone brightly, and it actually flickered along with the words on the wall. Then that thing flew back to Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue looked over, and when she saw what was on it, she immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. The content on the transparent remnant page was exactly the same as on the last wall. Every character, even every glimmer, was exactly the same. The size of this transparent remnant page was probably not even 1% of the wall, but when Chu Luiyue looked at it, for some reason, she felt that those characters were reflected on the transparent remnant page, and they were still clearly visible, and even seemed a little small and empty. It was just a transparent remnant page, but Chu Luiyue felt that it seemed to contain a huge space that could accommodate everything. Chu Luiyue stretched out her hand, and the transparent remnant page flew back into her hand. She lowered her eyes and looked at it carefully. She saw that every character was clearly written on it. She opened her mouth, but was so shocked that she couldn't say a word. This transparent remnant page was actually a complete copy of the Heaven Tier martial skill on the last wall. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Chu Luiyue wouldn't have believed what was happening. A Heaven Tier martial skill was such a powerful and sacred existence, yet it was so easily copied. Chu Luiyue closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again. Everything in front of her had not disappeared. She couldn't help but look at the wall again, but there was no change. In the next moment, her palm turned cold, and the remnant page turned back into a water droplet and returned to her dantian. Then, Chu Luiyue clearly felt that there was something extra in her mind. It was a Heaven Tier martial skill. Even though she was still unable to comprehend it, it truly existed in her body. This can be done? Chu Luiyue couldn't help but mutter. She only knew that the water droplet in her dantian contained an extremely vast power, and every time she encountered danger, it could save her life. But who would have thought that it could actually help her copy a Heaven Tier martial skill? No, it should be said that a Heaven Tier martial skill could actually be copied. That's not a copy. That's the power of the heavenly Tao that it contains forcefully taken away. The three-eyed eagle suddenly opened its mouth. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. What? The three-eyed eagle said slowly, "Take a look again." Chu Luiyue looked at the last wall again. There's nothing changed. Before she could finish her sentence, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt that something was amiss. The characters on it didn't change, but the overall feeling was indeed different. It was as if it had lost the indescribable sense of holiness and vastness from before. All that was left was a bunch of messy characters. The three large silver words floating in front of her gradually dissipated and finally disappeared without a trace. The reason why it is the Heaven Tier martial skill, the Heavenly Tao. Now that this power has been taken away by you, the things left here have become completely useless. Without the guidance of the Heavenly Tao, other cultivators won't be able to comprehend it even if they continue to look at it for 100 years. Chu Luiyue was enlightened. I see. In that case, the so-called power of the Heavenly Tao is equivalent to the soul of a Heaven Tier martial skill? Without this, the Heaven Tier martial skill is equivalent to being dead? Looks like you're not that stupid. The three-eyed eagle said coldly. Chu Luiyue didn't care about the three-eyed eagle's mockery. She was very tactful that it could tell her this. After pondering for a moment, she continued to ask, "If I leave now and take the things with me, will others notice the abnormality here?" The three-eyed eagle sneered with undisguised arrogance. "Of course. In my God realm, everything is under my control. Even if you leave, no one will notice any changes here. Unless he's an expert who can comprehend a Heaven Tier martial skill." Chu Luiyue felt slightly relieved. There shouldn't be such an existence in Tai Yen Academy. She nodded. Then let's go now. When Chu Luiyue came out of the library, it was almost noon. The two people in charge of guarding the door had lost a lot of weight after this period of torment. They looked very haggard. Therefore, when they saw Chu Luiyue walking out, their mouths were wide open in shock. Chu, Chu, Chu. The two of them stuttered for a long time and only pointed at Chu Luiyue with trembling fingers. Chu Luiyue looked up at the blue sky and exhaled softly. Then, she said to the two of them, "I came out early." The two of them were shocked and couldn't believe it. Really? Chu Luiyue could have stayed in there for a month. Now, it's only been 10 days and she's planning to end it? Chu Luiyue tilted her head and swept her gaze across the pile of books beside the two of them. Are these the books that record the books I've read? The two of them instinctively nodded. When they saw Chu Luiyue's seemingly smiling face, They suddenly recovered their senses and lowered their heads in embarrassment. They knew very well how many books Chu Luiwei had read. She had cleaned out the entire second floor and read quite a few books on the third and fourth floors. Even if she leaves now, she's read enough. If she really stays for a month, she'll probably destroy the entire library. Why? I'll go get Elder Emotsang now. One of them hurriedly left. Chu Luiwei didn't mind and waited at the same spot. 10 days have passed. I wonder what's the situation on Mu Qinghe's side. Country Yaochen, Imperial City, Palace. Emperor Zhouwen's face was terrifyingly dark as he stared at the Empress in front of him. I'll ask you again. Where's Rongzhen? The Empress was very anxious and anxiously explained. Your Majesty, let me explain. Hua. Emperor Zhouwen suddenly swept the things on the table beside him to the floor and angrily said, I'm asking you. Where's Rongzhen now? The Empress was so frightened that she shivered. Her legs turned to jelly, and she knelt on the floor as tears streamed down her face. Your Majesty, I don't know where Rongzhen is. Emperor Zhouwen was so angry that his face turned green. Because of country Xing Luo's matters, he didn't have the time to care about Rongzhen. After Rongjin left with the others, he then remembered that he hadn't seen Rongzhen for quite some time. Thinking that Rongzhen didn't come out on such an important day, Emperor Zhouwen felt that she was a little insensible. Hence, he personally went to her bedroom to teach her a lesson. The Empress stopped him a few times, which made him even more suspicious. He directly ordered someone to break open the bedroom door. However, when he came in, he realized that Rongzhen wasn't here. He then realized that something was amiss and started to interrogate the Empress. At this point, Eunuch Min suddenly walked in from outside the door and whispered something into Emperor Zhouwen's ear. Emperor Zhouwen was shocked and furious as he harshly kicked the Empress's heart. See Huijing. You've got guts. How dare you raise a secret guard? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 357. The Empress's heart skipped a beat. The matter was indeed exposed. She was anxious as she endured the pain in her chest and begged, Your Majesty, I don't have any intentions. Your Majesty, I don't have any other intentions. It's just for stability. After so many years, only Si Meng, you still dare to deny it. Emperor Zhouwen was furious, and there seemed to be a fire burning in his eyes. The Empress was shocked. Emperor Zhouwen had never been so angry at her. She actually knew that this matter had crossed Emperor Zhouwen's bottom line. It didn't matter if there was 1 or 10. The important thing was that Emperor Zhouwen had been kept in the dark about Si Meng's existence. This was equivalent to giving Emperor Zhouwen and the entire palace guards a loud slap. Speak. Where that traitor and Rongzhen now? The Empress cried and shook her head. Your Majesty, I really don't know. Si Meng died a few days ago, but Zhenzhen's whereabouts are still unknown. Emperor Zhouwen stared at her with deadly eyes and sneered. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? It's true. I've been in contact with him, but we suddenly stopped a few days ago. He's indeed dead. Your Majesty, I didn't lie to you. Emperor Zhouwen finally believed the Empress a little when he saw her like this, but the anger in his heart didn't decrease at all. We'll talk about whether he's dead or alive later. I want to know where Rongzhen is now. The Empress cried even more sorrowfully. Your Majesty, I've actually been secretly searching for Rongzhen these few days, but I didn't find any clues. I'm very worried, and I've been feeling uneasy these few days. Emperor Zhouwen couldn't hold it in and kicked her again. If you're really uneasy, you should have told me long ago. If I didn't find out myself today, how long were you planning to hide it for? You're already the Empress, and your son is the Crown Prince. What are you still not satisfied with? The Empress knelt on the floor. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were dirty. She looked very disheveled. Eunuch Min stood behind Emperor Zhouwen and was terrified when he saw this scene. He had served His Majesty for so many years, but he had never seen His Majesty hit the Empress. He was clearly furious today. He didn't dare to dissuade him. It was bad enough that the Empress hid Rongzhen's disappearance, But she actually kept secret guards. Wasn't this going against His Majesty? Once this matter was exposed, she might not be able to keep her position as the Empress. Men, take the Empress away. At the same time, summon Siyi to the palace. He wanted to ask Siyu Ji if the Si family was planning to rebel. The Empress raised her head abruptly, her face full of panic. Was His Majesty going to imprison her? How could that be? Once the news got out, she would definitely lose her position as the Empress. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Please take into account that this concubine has served you for so many years and let this concubine off this time. And Rongjin, no matter how you want to punish this concubine will accept it. However, if the country of Xingluo finds out about this, it will definitely have a huge impact on our marriage. The latter part of the sentence made Emperor Jiawen's heart waver. Not bad. Now that Rongjin is in country Xingluo, his marriage with Situ Xingchen can be confirmed if everything goes well. But if this scandal gets out at this time, he stared at the Empress with a heavy gaze, which made her feel weak. Si Huijing, you sure have a good plan. She must have calculated all of this long ago. She purposely made Rongjin her last shield. He clearly knew that she purposely dug a hole for him, but he still had to jump into it. The Empress's pale lips trembled as she averted her gaze. She didn't dare to look at Emperor Jiawen or speak again. After some time, Emperor Jiawen coldly said, "Pass on my orders. The Empress has contracted a serious illness and is bedridden. Concubine Gu will be in charge of the harem affairs for now." The Empress's heart sank. His Majesty is going to imprison me and take away all of my rights. Your Majesty, Emperor Jiawen bent down and harshly pinched the Empress's chin as he said word by word, "I'll send someone to Rongjin. When Rongjin's matter is settled and Rongjin's whereabouts are revealed, I'll deal with you." Then he flung his wrist and the Empress fell to the ground. He turned around and left with big strides. Eunuch Min glanced at the Empress and hurriedly followed him. The Empress only heaved a sigh of relief when their figures completely disappeared. She suddenly took out something from her arms. Now, all of her hopes were placed on Rongjin. The matter of the marriage alliance must go smoothly. Country Xingluo. The palace banquet to welcome Rongjin and the rest was in progress. Many people were toasting Rongjin in the palace, and it was very lively. The reason for this was that country Xingluo's Emperor Mingzhen, Situ Chong, had just agreed to Rongjin's marriage proposal to Situ Xingchen. Both parties were officially in-laws. Situ Chong seemed to be very satisfied with Rongjin, and he even directly set the wedding date to be a month later. This made the crowd very confused. In the past, many aristocratic families had proposed to Situ Xingchen, but neither Situ Xingchen nor Situ Chong agreed. They originally thought that Situ Chong couldn't bear to part with his precious daughter, but they didn't expect him to directly agree once Rongjin came. Of course, everyone knew that this marriage was very important, and it must have been discussed beforehand. Now, it was just a formality. However, the crowd still couldn't figure out why it had to be Rongjin. According to rumors, the crown prince of country Yaochen didn't have a good reputation recently. What surprised everyone was that Elder Zhong Yi, who had just returned from Mingyue Tianshan, actually praised Rongjin. With him speaking, nobody dared to object. Thus, the matter of the marriage was successfully completed. Rongjin was really proud of being surrounded by the crowd. Looking at those people's jealous and envious gazes, he felt that he finally had an outlet to vent everything that he had suffered previously. With a face full of smiles, he toasted Situ Xingchen, who was sitting not far away. Situ Xingchen smiled and nodded gently, looking dignified and gentle. Rongjin was elated. "What's mine will eventually belong to me." Suddenly, his expression changed, and he smiled at the surrounding people. "I'm a little dizzy. I'll go out to take a breather." The crowd thought that he wanted to avoid the wine, so they laughed and didn't stop him. Rongjin hurriedly left the palace. Situ Xingchen squinted her eyes, stood up, and walked out of the palace. Rongjin walked to a secluded corner and took out a bell from his arms. At this point, the bell was vibrating, and the sound was very soft. However, Rong Jin's face turned even uglier. Before he left, he especially left this twin bell behind. If Rong Jin's matter was exposed, Mother would shake it. Did something happen on Mother's side? Your Highness. A gentle voice sounded. Digression, I'm so sleepy. I drank some coffee and it really refreshed me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 358. Rong Jin immediately hid the twin bell and turned around to look. It was Situ Xingqian, eldest princess. Why are you here? Rong Jin forced a smile and asked. Situ Xingqian didn't seem to notice his unnatural expression as she smiled gently. I just drank some wine and felt a little dizzy, so I wanted to come out for some fresh air. I didn't expect to meet you coincidentally. Rong Jin nodded perfunctorily as he was still thinking about Rong Zhen. Situ Xingqian glanced at him and asked uncertainly, Why do you look so serious? You seem to have something on your mind. Rong Jin hid his smile and said, Eldest princess, you're overthinking. Situ Xingqian's lips curved up into a smile, and her face blushed as if she were shy. The crown prince and I are already engaged, yet you still call me that. You're treating me like an outsider. If you don't mind, you can call me by my name. Rong Jin was a little surprised, but his heart skipped a beat when he saw the faint blush on Situ Xingqian's innocent face. Xingqian. Situ Xingqian nodded, and her voice was as gentle as the wind that brushed past Rong Jin's heart. If there's anything bothering you, you can talk to Xingqian about it. It won't be good if you keep it bottled up in your heart. Situ Xingqian's words seemed to have some magical power as Rong Jin couldn't help but let down his guard. Actually, it's nothing much. It's just some small matters. He slightly relaxed. Luckily, he had already settled his engagement with Situ Xingqian. If not, he really didn't know what kind of situation he would face when he returned. Situ Xingqian quietly looked at Rong Jin and acted like a patient listener. Rong Jin had drunk some wine, and he was a little tipsy. When Situ Xingqian looked at him with such a gaze, an impulse surged in his heart, and he couldn't help but blurt out some words. Actually, my younger sister is in some trouble. Situ Xingqian blinked. Fourth princess? Rong Jin nodded with a solemn expression. Fourth princess was fine when she was with Chu Liwei previously. Why is she in trouble now? Asked Situ Xingqian confusedly. However, Rong Jin was shocked. What did you say? You saw Rong Zhen and Chu Liwei together? Situ Xingqian nodded. Yeah. 2 days before I came back. Rong Jin quickly recalled the time and shockingly realized that it was when Rong Zhen went missing. He stepped forward, grabbed Situ Xingqian's shoulders, and anxiously asked, Why are you here? Where did you see them? Do you know what they were doing at the time? Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's face as she looked down to hide the deep hatred in her eyes. Your Highness, you're hurting me. Rong Jin hurriedly let go. Sorry, I was a little agitated just now. Is what you said true? Situ Xingqian looked at him in shock as if she did not understand why he had such a huge reaction. That's right. That day, I was planning to return to the inn to pack my things when I saw Chu Liwei and the fourth princess leaving together. There was an old man following behind them. I was quite far away, so I couldn't see who he was. As for where they went, I'm not sure either. What's wrong? Is this important? Rong Jin's body trembled slightly, and he didn't say anything for a long time. The old man following them is most likely Si Meng. This means that Rong Zhen's disappearance really has something to do with Chu Liwei. Previously, his mother had mentioned it, but he did not think much of it. He only thought that his mother did not like Chu Liwei, so she purposely dragged her into this. Thinking about it now, perhaps mother was right. Rong Zhen and Chu Liwei did have a conflict between them. Since Si Meng was also there, it could be confirmed that Rong Zhen requested to leave the palace. It was very likely that she went to look for Chu Liwei first. According to her personality, she would definitely do such a thing. However, he did not expect that Chu Liwei would be unharmed, and Rong Zhen would disappear for no reason. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning crazily in his heart. Your Highness? Your Highness? Situ Xingchen called him twice with a worried look on her face. Rong Jin suddenly had an idea. Is Chu Luiyue still at Tai Yen Academy? That's right. Why are you suddenly looking for her? Rong Jin was silent for a moment before he suddenly said, Xingchen, can I ask you for a favor? Situ Xingchen smiled slowly and gently said, Your Highness. Please go ahead. Elder Mo Tsang quickly arrived at the library. When he saw Chu Luiyue standing there, his heart skipped a beat. He then believed that Chu Luiyue was really planning to leave. When he first heard the news, he was still in disbelief. All the geniuses who won first place in the Qingjiao competition would make full use of the 1-month time limit. After all, it was a rare opportunity. However, Chu Luiyue only took 10 days. Elder Mo Tsang was surprised and elated. However, when he saw the stacks of books, his good mood was instantly shrouded in a layer of darkness. Even if Chu Luiyue only stayed here for 10 days, he read more than others could finish in a few months. Now, Elder Mo Tsang could only hope that Chu Luiyue only opened those books and did not read them in detail. Chu Luiyue, have you really decided to leave? Asked Elder Mo Tsang solemnly with one hand behind his back. Chu Luiyue smiled. Didn't you wish for this to happen a long time ago? Elder Mo Tsang snorted. Don't be too smug. Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew. Chu Luiyue did not take it to heart and smiled. Don't worry, Elder Mo Tsang. I understand that. Elder Mo Tsang sized Chu Luiyue up and thought to himself, for some reason, Chu Luiyue seems to be in a good mood today. Thinking about it carefully, anyone who got the chance to borrow so many books for free and even unlocked an Earth Stage Warrior Technique book would be overjoyed. On his way here, he had already confirmed that Chu Luiyue did not find any other Earth Stage Warrior Technique books after that day. This was considered a blessing in disguise. Since you've made up your mind, then, I'll bring you to the entrance of the academy. Tai Yen Academy had a strict barrier. If Chu Luiyue wanted to leave, she needed Elder Mo Tsang's permission. Chu Luiyue nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you, Elder Mo Tsang. Elder Mo Tsang sneered in his heart. He did not fall for it and waved his sleeves. Let's go. Chu Luiyue did not mind Elder Mo Tsang's attitude and followed after him. The two of them walked towards the entrance of the academy one after another. Along the way, Elder Mo Tsang's face was cold and he did not say a word. Chu Luiyue was tactful and did not say anything. Anyway, she had already gotten what she wanted the most. These cold faces and sarcastic remarks were nothing to her. Elder Mo Tsang extended his hand and was about to open the barrier. Chu Luiyue stood at the side and waited quietly. Suddenly, a deep and cold voice sounded. You're not allowed to leave. Digression. Today, Xiaoxiang seemed to have delayed the mobile phone user's browsing experience again. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 359. Upon hearing this voice, a cold glint flashed across Chu Luiyue's eyes. She then calmed herself down and looked back calmly. The person who spoke was Cheng Han. Director? Why are you here? Elder Mo Tsang was shocked. Cheng Han had been busy investigating Yang Jianqing and Heng Jingchua, so he hadn't shown up for a few days. He didn't expect to suddenly appear now. You said that you're not letting her go. Are you referring to Chu Luiyue? Cheng Han strode over with a serious face. That's right. Elder Mo Tsang was stunned. For a moment, he was at a loss. Didn't the director want Chu Luiyue to leave as soon as possible? Now that she's finally leaving, why isn't he letting her go? Director, what are you? Cheng Han stood 3 steps away from Chu Luiyue with a cold expression. Chu Luiyue, you know why I'm stopping you, right? Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Did he find out about the God-stunning technique? That shouldn't be the case. Cheng Han shouldn't be able to find out about this given his abilities. A polite smile appeared on her calm face. Director Cheng Han, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know? Cheng Han sneered. No one knows better than you what you've done. Rong Jin will be here soon. You should save your excuses for him. Rong Jin? Chu Luiyue secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like it's not because of the God-stunning technique. But what does this have to do with Rongjin? She knitted her brows slightly. From Cheng Han's point of view, Chu Liuyue's expression clearly showed her guilt and fear after being exposed. Seeing Cheng Han's gloating gaze, Chu Liyue suddenly remembered something. If I remember correctly, Rongjin should be in country Xingluo by now to marry Situ Xingqian. Just as she was thinking about this, she heard footsteps behind her. Cheng Han looked over, and a long-awaited smile appeared on his face. Chu Liyue turned around. Who else could it be other than Rongjin who was walking in from the door? His expression was anxious and his footsteps were hurried. It was obvious that he had rushed over from somewhere. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Rongjin suddenly stopped in his tracks. Along the way, he had been thinking about how to interrogate Chu Liyue when he saw her, but now that he saw her in person, his mind suddenly went blank. In his heart, he was actually unwilling to confront Chu Liyue face to face, but Chu Liyue saw the struggle that flashed across Rongjin's eyes, and he narrowed his eyes. Then, she saw Situ Xingqian behind Rongjin. She was one step behind Rongjin and seemed to have accompanied him here. When she looked up and saw Chu Liyue, she was also shocked. Obviously, she did not expect to bump into her here. However, she quickly adjusted her expression. She nonchalantly shifted her gaze away and walked to Rongjin's side. Your Highness, if you have something to say, we can talk it out. Don't be angry. Chu Liyue raised her brows high. Since when did Situ Xingqian and Rongjin become so close? They seem to have only met a few times, right? Rongjin glanced at Situ Xingqian and nodded. Don't worry. I know what to do. Chu Liyue crossed her arms and was in deep thought. I just entered the library to read for a few days, but many things seem to have happened outside. Director Cheng Han, thank you for stopping her for me. Rongjin cupped his fists and bowed to Cheng Han. Cheng Han waved his hands. It's just a small matter, it's not worth mentioning. Xingqian told me that I must help you, so I naturally won't reject it. Rongjin looked at Situ Xingqian gratefully. Thank you. Don't delay His Highness's work, said Situ Xingqian gently. Chu Liyue finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. If she hadn't personally seen the cloud pattern on Situ Xingqian's clothes and how she looked when she faced Rongxiu, she would have really thought that Situ Xingqian had a crush on Rongjin. Other things aside, her acting skills are really good. Upon hearing this laugh, Rongjin instinctively felt that Chu Liyue was mocking him, and his face couldn't help but change. Chu Liyue, what are you laughing at? Chu Liyue shrugged his shoulders. Nothing. Your Highness, why are you looking for me? Just tell me. Why do you have to make such a big fuss? Rongjin paused and asked in a low voice, is it Rongjin's fault? Is Rongjin's matter related to you? Chu Liyue's eyes sparkled. What? Upon seeing her reaction, Rongjin's heart wavered. She really doesn't seem to know. However, Situ Xingqian clearly said that she saw Chu Liyue and Rongjin together. I'm asking you, did you do something to Rongjin previously? A thought flashed across Chu Liyue's mind. I did this very secretly, so logically speaking, nobody should have noticed. However, the Empress might know that it was me. After all, the Empress most likely knows what Rongjin did previously. It seems very normal for her to tell Rongjin this guess. But why does Rongjin look like he's very certain about this matter? Chu Liyue shook his head. Your Highness, I really don't know what you're asking. Shouldn't the fourth princess be in country Yao Chen's palace now? Why are you finding trouble with me? Rongjin finally couldn't hold it in as he stepped forward and suppressed his voice. Don't pretend anymore. You must be behind Rongjin's disappearance. Someone saw her with you before she went missing. Chu Liyue blinked, and his clear eyes were enveloped in a faint layer of confusion. The fourth princess went missing? When did this happen? Upon seeing her expression, Rongjin suddenly hesitated. Does Chu Liyue really not know? Chu Liyue's gaze turned slightly, and he looked at Situ Xingqian with interest. She thought that she knew how Rongjin found out. Eldest Princess, may I ask, was it you who told His Highness the Crown Prince that you saw me with the fourth princess? Situ Xingqian bit her lips and knitted her brows, looking very pitiful. He did see you. I'm sorry, I didn't know that the fourth princess went missing. I just said it unintentionally when His Highness asked. You didn't do it on purpose? Chu Liyue's lips slowly curved up. Very good. This one sentence easily turned his suspicions into certainty. Rong Zhen's disappearance was indeed related to her. However, she didn't remember when she was with Rong Zhen. Before leaving the imperial city, she didn't even show her face. Sidu Xingchen was lying. Chu Liyue, what else do you have to say now? Seeing that Chu Liyue didn't say anything for a while, Rong Jin thought that she was guilty, so he spoke again. After pausing for a moment, he continued. I know that Rong Jin isn't dead yet. As long as you hand her over, I promise that I won't kill you. Chu Liyue coldly glanced at him. Your Highness, are you going to convict me based on her one-sided words? Digression, there's one more update later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveWeb. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.